Hello, welcome in everybody, it's Laura. Today we're going to do things a little bit different. Yesterday I talked about the pretty intense energies being triggered in the collective. I did talk about the distorted masculine energy rising to the surface in that shadowy aspect. And I do want to talk about awakening. I want to talk about projections. I want to talk about spiritual protection, because in recent light of this catalytic soulmate connection that entered my life last week, I did some digging. I've done a lot of self-reflection. I've done a lot of journaling. And I want to talk about this because as divine feminines, when we come into alignment and we shine our light, even as a masculine shining your light, standing firm in your beliefs and in your values, doing the shadow work, standing in the light of truth, we trigger a lot of unhealed wounds in others that are claiming to be false prophets or false light beings doing God's work, or under the guise of being super spiritual in order to lure women who are on the spiritual path doing the spiritual work, or men. This is not gender specific, but I am referencing my own personal experience here. I triggered this gentleman that came onto my path, and in hindsight, I went back through the messages. I was love bombed. I was manipulated. I was then devalued, slandered, and defamed after calling out the manipulative patterns that I recognized, because I have done the work. I've been on the healing journey since my awakening in 2019. I've also been very open throughout the years, publicly open about the mental health struggles as part of the awakening, and when we can go into spiritual psychosis, and when we are disillusioned, and the importance of grounding and the importance of meditation, and how far I have come from all of those experiences. And usually this awakening journey will trigger and activate all of these unhealed shadowy aspects, unhealed wounds, almost like a remembrance of complex PTSD, and it can create a lot of mental illness. It can create almost like what I want to call is the splitting. And so I did make a public post on my social media, on my Facebook, about love bombing. And I did expose some screenshots without exposing this person's name, because I felt women and men alike need to be aware, because oftentimes these patterns are played out unconsciously. And we do this and we're not even conscious of the patterns or our reactions to the patterns. And so there's a lot of this situation being mirrored right now. And I do want to reference a biblical overview. If we reference the story of David and Goliath, Goliath being this giant warrior from the Philistines, and huge in size, wanting to be intimidating, wanting to appear very intimidating, and he taunted the Israelites. And he instilled fear in everybody. And then we talk about David was like this very young shepherd boy, right? And he had no armor. He had no weaponry other than sling and stones. So he really wasn't qualified by any worldly standards to go up against this giant, this Goliath, right? All he carried with him was faith in God and his inner strength. And I want to speak about this publicly and share this publicly, especially in light of the recent exposure on social media. I'm not going to get into politics. I never do get into politics. But with the recent assassination that was all over social media yesterday, and also with the very public murder of the young Russian woman who sought refuge in the USA. And so we do need to talk about this, because people are becoming mentally unhinged with these very intense astrological aspects. We do have Mars in Libra. It is going to be going into Scorpio, and these energies are building, and there's going to be a culminating square between Mars and Scorpio and Pluto in Aquarius. This is raging anger, repressed shadowy energy coming into light, and it does kind of feel like a spiritual warfare. And I feel I have been spiritually attacked since this exposure. I wouldn't say that I fear for my family or my safety, but I'm definitely being super cautious and super vigilant, because I am aware of abusive patterns that I have overcome in these relationship cycles, and I'm very much aware of how projection works. And so this David and Goliath story is mirroring what I am experiencing right now. So this gentleman now, which I didn't feel was a bad person, is really showing themselves to be exactly who they are, all because I exposed the pattern. I called out the pattern. I withdrew my energy. I basically rejected him. I triggered rejection wounds. I triggered abandonment wounds. And we talked about the synastry of this. If you want to go further into this catalytic energy and how to pinpoint it in astrology, I will tag yesterday's video at the end of this one. But this person is trying to exude power over me. He's trying to force intimidation, force me to silence myself, even though there was actually no direct exposure. He has been indirectly threatening me through multiple posts that sound very unhinged, very threatening on his social media. I have decided to no longer feed this energy, but I do want to talk about it because we do have to protect ourselves. Yes, I do believe divine feminine and masculine light beings do have divine protection. We do have to hold in our faith, and we do cut through illusions. We expose the shadow in people. And so I do see clearly that is what I have done. I have exposed something deep and dark within this person, where he has been portraying as somebody of faith, of God, of unity consciousness, using that, I feel, to lure prey and women who are on the spiritual path. Most of his Facebook is filled with spiritual women who are working on healing, who maybe haven't mastered self-love or stepped into their worth or stepped into their value like I have. It took me a hot minute, but I recognized the pattern. And looking back in hindsight, this person did appear in my energy field back in June of this past summer. Reaching out, hoping to collaborate with me in a professional manner. And I had said, sure, we could get together for coffee, but I'm never one to pursue anything. I'm always one to attract. And then, especially when it comes to masculine energy, I don't initiate, I don't pursue, and I'm not a chaser. I used to be when I was unhealed in my in my anxious attachment style. I used to be unhealed, and I used to chase, and I used to seek validation, but I've healed those wounds. And so this man basically is puffing himself up, using intimidation, using social media to cause slander, and this projection is his weapon. He's accusing me of the very things that he's doing. So basically this person stalked my social media for months to study me, to learn about my wounds, to learn about all of the things that I publicly talk about and write about and share about the awakening journey. And so his power sounds very loud. He's trying to intimidate me. He's trying to threaten me, even though it's indirectly. There are a lot of hints that you can tell these are indirect threats directly towards me. And he's trying to scare me into silence because I called him out and I exposed his negative patterns, his negative behavior. Do I believe anybody on this planet is inherently narcissistic? Absolutely not. Do we all have narcissistic tendencies? Absolutely yes. Are we here to recognize those? Yes. Are we here to heal from those patterns? Yes. We all have programmed patterns within us that have carried through our lineage and society as a whole. And so right now, I am choosing to not post back. I'm not going to lower myself to this drama. I made one singular post. I am not removing the post. I am exposing love bombing for what it is, because love bombing happens to men and women alike. And there are people out there that thrive on drama, that thrive on manipulation. And instead of actually doing the shadow work, will project all of their unhealed wounds onto somebody, trying to create them into the energy of being a victim. I am going to continue to stand in my truth. I am not going to back down, especially in light of everything that has been exposed on social media, publicly connected to the assassination of, I believe it was Charles Kirk. I've never heard of that person before yesterday. Just a very disheartening, it's very disheartening to see that somebody that stands in the light of their truth, whether you agree with their beliefs or not, that person has a right to those beliefs and has a right to that truth when they are not causing harm to another. And so I'm going to stand in my truth. My intuition definitely sent the red flags to my logic. And I know that I am protected as a divine feminine. And so I'm not going to use brute force, just like the story of David and Goliath. I'm going to stand in my spiritual clarity. I'm going to keep grounded in discernment, because we are in the middle of eclipse portals. And let's face it, this is drudging up all of these past life soul ties, all of this negative energy, and that Mars square Pluto energy is building. And this is going to expose the darkness in people. So lean on your guides, lean on your angels. We do have divine support when it comes to these, I want to say, spiritual attacks. I am tired. I don't feel well. I do feel this person is trying to spiritually attack me. He is blocked on all social media, but I have had several friends that have reached out to me concerned for my safety and the safety of my daughters. And this is where divine masculines really need to step up in that provision, in that protection, and as that true divine masculine leader. And so what this person is actually projecting, all this energy is going to return to them tenfold. That's how that works. You can't throw mud at a light worker and think that that mud is going to stick. So what he's doing, slander. He's slandering me. He's projecting all of his shadow onto me. And he is indirectly harassing me, and yet calling me the one harassing from one post. And he is blocked on all social media. I don't know how to block him on my YouTube channel. I don't know if he still watches my YouTube content. But this mud that he's throwing at me, it isn't going to stick. It's going to go right back onto him, because the thoughts and the projections that we send out there, towards another, and wishing somebody ill will, the universal law does not go for that. That will go all back onto him with his own shadow projections. And he's going to unravel and become his own undoing. And it has nothing to do with me. I'm the target. But everything that's being triggered in him has nothing to do with me. I just kind of pointed out the triggers, pointed out the wound. But now he's targeting me. And so energy kind of works like a boomerang. When we project onto other people, it comes back to us. And I've been the victim of my own projections as well, because I had to go into the depths of my own inner shadow and do that work back in 2019 when I had my awakening. I've spent I've spent 2 bouts in the psychiatric ward seeking help for the spiritual psychosis that I did experience during my 2 spirals of ascension. And there is no shame in needing to reach out for medical professional help when you are in those states of disillusionment, because sometimes we do need help to get grounded. And for somebody to throw medical aid in somebody's face is just downright dirty. And so this tenfold principle of the spiritual law is what we do call karma. And so all of this spewing of this mud is him creating his own karma, yet he's projecting it all onto me. And so I know there is spiritual energy at play. And I am going to do some protection rituals today for me and my daughters. I'm going to be vigilant. I do not want to escalate this situation. So therefore, I'm not going to be contacting the authorities at this time. Thank God I do have video cameras outside of my house that do record anything entering or leaving the home. And I'm going to be extra vigilant. So I just ask you all to send me a little bit more extra love and protection at this time. So I activated something in this gentleman because of my divine feminine energy and my authenticity. And when I rejected his manipulative love bombing tactics, this did trigger his unhealed wounds. And I see that very clearly now. So instead of him actually healing, he's resisting this. He's now projecting this onto me. And basically he's facing his own inner giants, his own inner demons, his own inner Goliath. And these demons basically are fighting against the light that I am reflecting onto him. And so when somebody falsely accuses another of being mentally unstable, when they themselves are spiraling, the universe will course correct that. And I'm not going to have to lift a finger. I'm not going to have to do anything. Over time, others will see the truth. Others will see the truth, because any false narratives always reveal themselves. Okay. And so the takeaway of this is I would represent the David energy, where I'm standing in the divine truth and I'm protected by faith and authenticity. And he might think he's standing in his faith and authenticity, but the devil comes wrapped up in all kinds of illusions. And he's actually playing into the dark. The darkness is loud. The darkness is inflated. But ultimately, the darkness falls to its own projections. And we all have a shadow self. And so I don't need to fight back on my level. I threw one stone. And I didn't even throw the stone directly at him. I threw the stone at the pattern itself. And I clearly defined my boundaries. And he's refused to absorb his own projection. So every stone he throws at me is going to circle back at him. And this is how we step into empowerment, because we have to trust that no weapon formed against us will prosper. I walk in divine protection. He may think he walks in divine protection, and maybe he does, because at the core, I do believe we are all beings of God, and we all have our own path through the darkness back into the light. But I am being guided by truth and my inner strength. And the further along the path of alignment I get, the more my light is going to heal unhealed wounds in others. So anybody who tries to attempt and project negativity on me, they're basically showing me where they're battling their own dark subconscious thoughts and unhealed wounds. And so anything we send out to another in a negative form will come back to us tenfold. And that is the truth. Our thoughts and our actions towards others basically are projecting our thoughts and our actions towards ourselves. So all of these false accusations he's putting towards me are actually exposing what he was planning for me. The abusive patterns he was bringing forward, trying to trick me that he was a light worker. And so I'm choosing not to absorb the chaos. I'm choosing to clear, protect, cleanse my home and cleanse my energy, and to keep standing in this light of truth. And so there's not going to be a reading today. And although I recently have gone public as a content creator on Facebook, I do believe it's time for me to close the curtain and make everything strictly private again, for the safety of my own children and myself. I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm a sovereign being, and I know that I'm divinely protected. But there are some energies out there that we do have to be extra vigilant around, especially in light of the recent murder of the Russian girl on, I think it was the subway. That was a man that was mentally unhinged, and this person is clearly mentally unhinged. And although I'm aligned with a higher power, I do have to stay vigilant in my physical reality. And I got my notes here because I definitely have journaled a lot. And so when we're grounded and empowered in a way that triggers other people, we do have to be mindful, because this person is doing what is classic projection from narcissistic patterns, the harassment, the projection, throwing my own healing journey in my face, my own awakening journey back at me as a weapon, because he doesn't want to face his own instability. It's actually really sad. It's really sad. And I hope this person heals. I really do. People are often threatened when a divine feminine or a feminine in general is standing firm in her self-empowerment. And people like to flip the script on those people because they want to discredit people that show them everything they don't want to look at. And so what he is saying that I am is actually who he is, because I have done the hard work. I have grown through all of those experiences, all of those spiritual lessons, all of what needed to be revealed to me has been worked through. And now I've showed him where he's stuck, where he's not actually aligned in truth. He's a false spiritual prophet, and he's being exposed by his own delusions and his own projections at this time. And so when we looked at this astrology the other day, the synastry chart, his moon, his sun, and Venus all sat in his 12th house. And all of that energy sat in my 4th house, which tells me I've learned the pattern. I've mastered the pattern, right? These eclipses for me are happening between my 1st and my 7th house. And so this is asking me, have I learned the lesson of self-empowerment? Am I ready for the new cycle of relationships that are coming onto my life that are no longer going to be karmic wrecking balls, right? Whereas him, I think he's struggling right now with that self-awareness. And he's definitely struggling with emotional regulation and all of these hidden fears coming to light, because the 12th house is all of the subconscious materials. The 12th house is the house of self-undoing, and that is exactly what is happening to him right now. I have not done anything to undo him. He is undoing himself. I activated him by calling out his behavior. Maybe I'm the first one that ever did. And he is basically now no longer able to suppress this behavior because I called it out. And so this is being expressed in negative, chaotic, destructive ways, and he's projecting it all onto me. And so yes, astrology can help us heal. It can help us pinpoint the patterns, but it can't make us do the inner work for us. And so I feel this projection is manifesting in his life as paranoia, projection, and he's trying to scapegoat me. He's trying to make me the problem to avoid doing the inner shadow work, to avoid looking at himself. And with the Pluto energy I talked about in the 4th house, he's got some deep ancestral and family trauma here that I've activated. And there's power struggles here, almost like I activated a power struggle dynamic wound within his home structure, whether it was a father wound or a mother wound. And this is where he needs to learn to completely transform his emotional foundations, because I've done the work. And I have transformed my foundation, and my emotions are regulated. And even though this did trigger a trauma response to me, I have all of the tools that I need to stay grounded in reality without paranoia. Did I at first play into some fear? Absolutely. Because my children are my #1 top priority. But he's not doing the work. He's trying to cling to control. He's trying to project all of his darkness outwardly onto me. And that is how people spiritually attack us. So yes, I am being spiritually attacked. Yes, I triggered this shadow work in him just by being my authentic self and standing in my light, standing in my truth. I think it's unbearable for him to look at the truth, to be rejected by a divine feminine. It's really hard to look in the mirror and face yourself. Trust me, I've done the work. He's lashing out at me for all of his unhealed wounds. So this isn't about me. I'm not crazy. I don't even think he's crazy. This is a reflection of him being unable to sit with his own shadow. And the more I'm going to hold this truth, the more it's going to trigger his shadows, the more his shadows are going to be exposed. And so I do not want to escalate the situation. I do realize he's spiraling. I do realize that this person very well could still be stalking my YouTube account, even though he's blocked on all other social media avenues. But I do feel this needs to be exposed. This needs to be talked about, because I will not be silenced. I will no longer dim my light. I will no longer allow other people's projections and shadows stop me from being self-empowered. And so I know that I've turned all of my painful past experiences and situations into wisdom to help others. And this is why I do what I do. And we all struggle with mental health. We all need to reach out for medical guidance, spiritual guidance, professional guidance at times. Does that make us weak? No, it makes us strong, because we all have to take responsibility for our own healing. And we also have to mirror back to people who are projecting their pain onto us. So he can try to shame me. He can try to discredit me. He can try to label me as narcissistic or crazy. But somebody calling me crazy doesn't make that true, okay? I know I've activated him, and I know he doesn't want to face this. And so sometimes astrology shows us what we don't want to see. Sometimes people activate us with our fears, with our wounds, with our emotions. And when that stuff gets stirred up, we stir up that cosmic shit pot, and all of the karma comes to light. And this is where spiritual attacks often happen on light workers. And so there's a lot of Pluto energy at play right now in the collective. And this is going to drudge up deep ancestral and emotional trauma. And for those of you who have done the work, you know and can recognize unhealed projections in others. Unhealed projections want to control people. They want to make you feel small so they can feel big. If you've ever had a healing journey connected to your mental health and your past as a weapon thrown back at you, it doesn't say anything about your worth. It doesn't say anything about your progress. It basically says everything about where that other person is in their own life and in their own inner battle. You are not defined by somebody else's projections. You are safe, you are divinely protected, and you are needing to stay anchored in your truth. When someone tries to stir your energy, it will always, always, always return to them until they face their own shadow. So stand tall in your light, light workers, divine masculine, divine feminine, stand tall in your light. Because our awakening is not weakness. It is our power. So don't let people put that on you as a weakness. Stand firm in your light. That is the message today. I will see you all again tomorrow.